Sal Barry and Jim Howard. This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast, our first podcast of 2020. Sal Barry here, joined by Jim, not the goalie, Howard. Jim, how are things with you today?
Today, pretty good so far. Can't complain. It's a little dreary day here in Raleigh, North Carolina, but looks like the rain's passed and the weather's pretty nice.
Oh, okay.
It's anytime that it's about 60 degrees, that's perfect hockey weather here in Raleigh.
Yeah, start planning that outdoor game now, right?
That's right.
So, couple things we're going to talk about today. We're going to give our 2-cent reaction of the Winter Classic. I know it's a bit past now, but we still want to chime in on that, especially since we talked about that last week. Got to talk about John Tortorella because he's just so damn funny, unintentionally funny. We'll talk about a little bit about Corey Perry, Ilya Kovalchuk, and the All-Star Game roster big reveal. Ooh. Go ahead.
I think I'm sorry for burying the lead here, but and we can talk about this later. But I think the big reveal that we're all hoping for at the All-Star Game is any new information about Seattle. That's what people really want to know. But we have to wait till the All-Star Game to hear it. Apparently.
Oh yeah, that's right. And
we might have a name. We might have a logo. We don't know.
Well, we here at Puck Junk have already come up with about 7 or 8 names of our own. So, I mean, and I'll link to that in the comments if you want to see what we thought the name of the team should be. I pulled the guys here at Puck Junk, and everybody had their own interesting take on what the team name should be.
I still have something riding on mine if it turns out to be the Sockeyes.
Yeah.
So. If that happens to end up being the name, I'm going to have to review one of those tawdry hockey romance novels by that lady that owns the trademark for that name.
For the Sockeye, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that would just be a good Puck Junk type review anyway. I mean, we on the site we talk about hockey cards, but then oh my god, you find like the New York Islanders Christmas album, and that becomes like my yearly obsession in December. So no, I love it. I'll just listen to it while I'm working. And those of you who maybe tuned in a couple weeks ago, you might have heard I put a little bit of the Islanders Christmas album at the beginning and at the end of the podcast. But I love that, and that's the kind of stuff we need to talk about on our site, So, I mean, yeah, by all means, hockey romance novels, that we should have somebody reviewing those. It should be you, because I don't want to.
You're saying I want to?
I'm saying I got a pile of serious hockey books I have to review. So,
What? I'm currently reading Wayne Gretzky's 99 Stories of the Game, which I found at a discount bookstore for $15, and it is an autographed copy. So I mean, yeah, the guy got a box of books in, and there was like 4 of them in there, and they're all autographed, and he priced them at $15.
Now, I wish I had known. I would have given you 15 plus shipping and whatever gladly for one of those. Because 1, I don't have that book. 2, it's signed by Gretzky. Wow, what a deal, man.
Yeah. I might be able to call the shop and see if I can get one. I know what shop it is. I can give him a call. Maybe he's still got a couple around. I'll see.
It was about a year ago. I found a book signed by Bobby Orr. It was a hardcover book. It wasn't his autobiography. It was a hardcover book from the 70s. It was like a hockey instructional book. So it had like a lot of photos of like how to shoot the puck, how to check somebody, how to do this, how to do that. So it wasn't like something you'd sit there and read unless you were like learning how to play hockey from a book. But in the front, it had a nice big autograph in marker. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, if somebody was going to forge a Bobby Orr autograph, it wasn't going to be on this, an oversized hardcover book about how to play hockey. So I was just like, yoink. I mean, I think I paid $30 for it.
No, that's great. You found a gem right there.
Yeah.
And you're right. It probably is. You can go look at Bobby Orr autographs. I might have one on a card somewhere. But you can go look on the internet, look at a bunch of Bobby Orr signatures, look at the one that you've got, and you should be able to, pretty easily detect whether or not it's close or somebody really just BS'd it.
Yeah, I did. I actually say that again.
I do that from time to time if I'm looking for somebody who is long past, and I'm looking for an autographed book of theirs, an old silent film star or something like that, and I'm like, okay, this seems a little cheap for this autographed copy of their book. Let me look at the signature and look at a bunch of their other things they've signed. Yeah, I think that might be a forgery, or this could be plausible. Well, it's just a trick you can do.
The thing is like forgeries, I'm not to get all into like the about autographs and stuff, but it was I bought it at a used bookstore, and they knew that it was a signed copy, but they weren't like going to like they were pricing it as a signed copy of an out of print book, but they weren't like, oh my God, this is Bobby Orr and it needs to be $100. They were just like signed copy, out of print book, $30, and I'm just like, okay. And I looked on my phone and I compared it, and it looked legit. And like I said, it looked like literally like something that somebody would have gotten signed in Boston in like the 70s. It was signed in marker, so it could have been signed later. I know Sharpie markers really didn't come about. I just read about this, that they didn't come about until like the 70s, but they didn't really catch on with autograph collectors until like the late 70s. But I don't know, it looked more like a magic marker than like a Sharpie marker, just like what you would have called a magic marker. But anyway, so yeah, so Seattle hopefully announces their team name. We'll talk a little bit more about the All-Star Game in a bit. So I want to talk about John Tortorella, because I don't want to say he's the gift that keeps on giving, but when he gives, it is a gift.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
I love his quote when he said he got mad at a sports writer and he just said, ask me a question. Don't say talk about, because they'll say talk about the game. Right. And that's a lazy sports writer's way of saying, I don't have a question, so I just want you to talk, and then maybe I could pull a quote from whatever you say. Tell me about the third period. You know what I mean? Like, well, we scored 3 goals, and so he wants a specific question, and I love that quote. Of course, I remember when he got irate with the Flames and he stormed their locker room and ended up getting suspended for a bunch of games, tried to fight their coach. A little misguided, but definitely passionate. Definitely.
That's one word for it.
A hard-ass coach, but also, I believe, a player's coach. So, just a quick rundown. So, the Blackhawks were at the Blue Jackets on December 29th, 2019. The Blue Jackets were up 2-0. The Blackhawks tied the game 2-2. Or you could say the Blue Jackets blew the lead. More on that in a bit. The Blackhawks were penalized for too many men on the ice in the closing moments of the game. Should have been at the 19.2 second mark, but the clock ran down to 18.1 seconds. Blue Jackets wanted more time on the clock. Timekeeper didn't put more time on the clock. Blue Jackets scored as the time expired, so they would have won the game if they only had that extra second on the clock. They would have won the game. So goes to overtime. What's that?
Okay, go ahead. I thought you were stopping right there. I was like, there was more to that right there. So, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so there's more to that. So the game goes to overtime, then it goes to the shootout. Blackhawks win in the shootout. First Blackhawks shooter, Jonathan Taves, he scores on Jonas Kopasalo. He's hurt. He has a torn meniscus. He's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. So the Blue Jackets put in Elvis Merlikins, their backup goalie. Patrick Kane scores a nice goal. Of course, Elvis was just put in. That was the first shot he was facing. So the Blue Jackets lose. The Blackhawks win in the shootout. Kopasalo's hurt. Tortorella goes on a rant after the game in the press conference. He didn't rant like a crazy person. He was mad, but he was just saying this is BS. The refereeing is BS. They should have put more time on the clock. That was BS. Now his goalie is hurt, and that's BS. But then it was kind of like, well, if we never went to the shootout, our goalie wouldn't have gotten hurt. And it's like, well, yeah, your goalie would have probably gotten hurt the next time. Like if I didn't run out of food, then I wouldn't have had to go to the store and I wouldn't have slipped on that patch of ice, right? You know what I mean? Like, if only we didn't run out of food, or if we didn't go to the shootout, our goalie wouldn't have gotten hurt. It's like, no, your goalie was going to get hurt anyway, maybe sooner or later, because all goalies get hurt sooner or later. So Tortorella was fined $20,000, plus he's got like another $25,000 fine that'll happen if he misbehaves within this calendar year. Like,
wow.
Yeah. You didn't know about that part?
No, that's actually news to me. I didn't hear that bit.
Yeah, so he's fined $20,000, but then it's like, and we're going to fine you another $25,000 if you shoot off your mouth again between now and like December 29th, 2020. So they gave him like a calendar year to like, which is funny because it's like, we're going to take this money for you. Here's what I think we need to do. I think we need to start a Kickstarter. We need to raise that $25,000 for John Tortorella, and then we just need to be like, the fine's already paid, John. When you're ready, just go for it. When you're so mad, when you're seeing red and you just want to like, go on a tirade, do it, because we got you covered, man. This one's on us.
Yeah. This a lot of bands back in or hard rock or rock and roll bands back in the 60s or 70s would come into a town and they'd speak with promoters and such and find out that there was like a no profanity or decency law or something like that. I know AC/DC was big about this. They would just automatically pay the fine before the show because they're like, yeah, we know we're there's no way we're making it throughout this show without dropping a few F-bombs and Angus Young dropping shorts. That's just going to happen. So they just go ahead and pay it. Yeah, it's that. I almost feel like that's what might have to happen for John Tortorella. But was John Tortorella wrong in his opinions of the situation? No, he was not wrong. Yes, all these things happened. Yeah, the referees refused to do anything about it. He questioned the league. The league refused to do anything about it. I think Toronto, wasn't going to do anything about it. Was he mad? Sure. That's just who John Tortorella is. But I think that additional fine actually colors in exactly what the real problem is. He handled it wrong. If he had not been absolutely livid and calling BS and I would say on the edge of verbally abusing the officials at the game, the refs and those behind the glass, I don't think he would be in the situation he is in right now. And this is again kind of what we talked about last week. You got to mind your P's and Q's in this league right now. And a lot of the things that John Tortorella has done in the past, with his tirades and his storming of locker rooms and things like that, that will get him in much hotter water than he was even in back then. If it happens within, like you said, the next calendar year or so.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess maybe that line that he crossed was criticizing the officiating. And so the NHL has to stick up for its referees, and they should. I think, look, everybody's going to complain about referees everywhere. I play hockey. People complain about the beer league referees. Although we do have one referee that like all the beer leaguers kind of know. I know he's not listening to this podcast. He's the only Russian referee in our area. So, kind of stands out a little bit. But, because you don't get too many of those. But like, be like, oh no, it's the Russian referee. No ice, no ice, no ice. That's he wants to go home, so he never calls icing, right? So, everybody complains about officiating. I think NHL refs do a great job. Do they miss a call from time to time? Yeah. Even I'll tell you, and I'm gonna screw up the game. I'm gonna screw up. It was a
It's a human game.
It is. There was okay, but I was watching one of the World Junior Championship games. Maybe it was Canada versus USA. Yeah, it was the round robin game, and a Canadian player got a penalty, and the sportscaster said, "Okay, you got a penalty," and then they took a look from another angle, and then the sportscaster said, "Oh no, that shouldn't be a penalty. The referee made a mistake." Then they showed it from a third angle, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, nope, that definitely is a penalty." And then they said, "That's why, we have all these angles, and it's easy for us to say, oh, that should be a penalty. That shouldn't be a penalty." Said, "We're not on the ice. We don't see what they see." And when they showed that third angle, and you saw the Canadian player clearly cross-check the American player into the boards, at first it looked like, from one angle, it looked like the American player fell forward, and the Canadian player was just kind of next to him and got blamed for it. But from the other angle, you saw that he deliberately pushed him. So, yeah, I mean, the referees make mistakes. Everybody always thinks it's personal against their team.
Of course.
Actually, though, I will say this, though. For a while, as a Blackhawk fan, I can say that it was personal against my team. And I will tell you why. Because in 1987, the referees went on a short strike. This was because Jim Schoenfeld went after Don Koharski and cursed him out after a game, or maybe it was intermission. But basically what happened was somebody shoved into Schoenfeld. He bumped into Koharski. Koharski thought he got pushed down because, he got knocked into by this coach. So he thought the coach pushed him down and cursed at him. Somebody pushed into the coach. He bumped into him, knocked him down. But he still followed him into the hallway and cursed him out and called him a fat pig. And and so the referees are like, "You can't treat us like this. You need to suspend this coach." And the NHL did nothing, so the referees were like, "All right, well, we're going on strike. You can't treat us like this." So Bill Wirtz, the owner of the Blackhawks, says, "We'll just hire new refs." And so for one day, they called it Yellow Sunday because I forget what game it was. But the referees, they hired these replacement referees, and they just threw yellow practice jerseys on them because they didn't have the striped jerseys. So that's Yellow Sunday, and it was just a shit show. And so, but it was Wirtz who was like, "Well, we'll just hire new referees, right? F those refs. We'll just get new ones, right?" So yeah. I will tell you that I used to think in the late 80s and early 90s, oh, the referees have it in for the Blackhawks, but I didn't understand why. And actually, after learning about that, I'm like, yeah, I kind of now know why if it's a 50-50 call, the ref is going to kind of lean against the Blackhawks on that. You know what I mean? And I can't say blame him. I mean, you're going to have that bias if the owner of the team just says, "F you guys, we're just going to get new refs."
Yeah, well, I mean, nowadays I think that's there's probably not that animosity still around for the Blackhawks. All of those characters are gone from the game. Mm-hmm. So that's not so much. But yeah, everybody looks at everything through their own rose-colored glasses. And there's some fantastic conspiracy theories about the refs and teams like that. I think it was Greg Wyshynski that went and did some tequila shots with one of the refs. Oh God, it's Tim Peel. Yeah, notorious Tim Peel. And it Tim Peel got suspended for one game, not because he actually let out that the NHL does ask them to be biased to, towards teams here and there to kind of, shift the momentum on a game. But the fact that he publicly was in a picture with Wyshynski with a tequila shot drinking, that's what he got suspended over.
Which is funny because Wyshynski always seemed to be the first guy to rip on Tim Peel. So the fact that he have a drink with them is kind of funny. So, Winter Classic.
Yeah.
Did you watch?
I did not watch, and I was busy all that day. So I really wanted to, but I just couldn't make it happen. I watched some of the highlights later. But like I said, what I really wanted to see was more of the pageantry that was going on, and try and get an understanding of why they wanted or why they were doing this whole state fair thing. And then, once I saw it, it was like, oh, okay, basically what they're doing is just they're setting up the rides and the food stands that would normally be at the Texas State Fair. And that was part of the pre and post game entertainment for the fans, where they could sit there and do the fun games and things like that. They already have those things. They're inexpensive to set up. They just put them out there where they need to around the concourses outside of the stadium, and have at it. So people were going nuts on corn dogs and stuff. And hey, I love me a corn dog. Don't get me wrong.
Have you seen the Pierre McGuire corn dog picture?
I don't think I have. Do I want to see this?
Huh?
Do I want to see this?
Okay, so it's Pierre McGuire about to bite into a foot-long corn dog. And this thing has just, been tearing around on Twitter and Instagram and all the memes and stuff, because everybody doesn't like Pierre McGuire. Or most people don't like Pierre McGuire. And so here he is with a foot-long corn dog about to wrap his mouth around the top of it to take a bite. And that became a picture, right? So, you can write your own joke or say what you want to say, or substitute the corn dog and say it's something else in your dirty little minds, whatever. But let's talk about the real problem here. The problem wasn't that Pierre McGuire was eating the corn dog. The problem was it wasn't Jeremy Roenick. So at the beginning they had hold on, because at the beginning they had this Ferris wheel, and they had Catherine Tappan and Patrick Sharp up in this Ferris wheel. They're standing. I think it was one of those Ferris wheels where it's they're actual I want to say little enclosed baskets. So it's not the one where you're just kind of your arms and legs are hanging out, and they're standing. What's that?
More like a ski gondola.
Yeah, and so they're standing, and then they're obviously the cameraman's there, so they're talking, and then they're just and then Catherine or Sharp, one of them is oh, I don't know why we're up here. I hate heights. And the other one's yeah, I'm scared of heights too. Get us down from here, right? And they actually legit seemed a little bit weird. And I'm thinking, who would not be afraid of being in a Ferris wheel?
Jeremy Roenick.
Jeremy Roenick, right? Because that's nothing to him. You know what I mean? Yeah. The guy goes after alligators when he needs his golf. Well, no, he didn't need his golf ball back. He just wanted to.
He just wanted to have a video of him going and tagging a damn alligator by the tail. Yeah, that was not me, buddy. Not me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're from the South. Don't you have alligators down there?
We in a south eastern corner of the state. Yes, we do have alligators near Wilmington, North Carolina. So yeah, they do exist. I have drilled. For those of you who don't know, I'm a geologist, and I work in civil engineering. I have drilled a bridge, 2 bridges, in fact, near a place called Lake Waccamaw in North Carolina. And the vibrations that our drill rig was making for the replacement of this bridge actually brought out baby alligators. So we had a nest of baby alligators that would come and swim out and come hang out with us. And my drillers would sit there and feed them from the shore and stuff. We never saw a mama, so that always kind of worried me a little bit that we never saw her.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something bad happened, and then...
No. I'm sure she was around. It wasn't that something bad happened to her. It's more the fact of, okay, where is she? Because I'm not seeing her.
Right. You want to see the danger and
yes.
not have it sneak up behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're a geologist, but I just got to ask, when you play rock, paper, scissors, you always have to pick rock?
I feel like that's the obvious answer, and that's why I win 2 out of 3 times.
So getting back, so Jeremy Roenick, not afraid of alligators, not afraid of heights, I assume, not afraid of foot-long corn dogs, I'm sure.
Well, have you seen him with a foot-long corn dog? Maybe that's his secret kryptonite.
No, I think he'd eat like 7 of them on a day. No, because it was like a couple, maybe it was last Winter Classic or something. They had something where they had him like going on this little chase around town because he was trying to find the right baseball field that the game was at or whatever. And he stops in this one restaurant and they're like, oh, we have world famous hot dogs. And then the next shot of him is just sitting there with like a plate full of hot dogs and just, eating. So I mean, obviously it's shtick, but yeah, I missed that. I missed that funny stuff that they put Roenick into. I mean, we wanted to see him. They had like a sheep petting zoo, and they had like all these different things, and I just think that he would have made it a lot funnier.
Yeah, he's there for that entertainment value. He's the class clown, and
you don't put Milbury there, or you don't put Sharp there. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work.
Yeah, there's nobody else in their carousel of personalities that can take his place right now. And so, hopefully, I hope he comes back, sometime by the All-Star break. But that's somebody else's business. We're not gonna sit there and hash into the old stuff there. Some of the other stuff in the Winter Classic. One of the things I did find amusing was that they were, I think, while it was the second highest attended Winter Classic,
yes,
it was one of the lowest ever viewed. And I suppose it's because of the teams involved.
Yes.
But I think also a little bit, some people may be kind of getting a little bit tired of the Winter Classic here and there as well. If it happened like every 4 years, like the Olympics, I think there'd be a lot more excitement around it and that sort of thing. But I think also, especially for this one, they pushed for more of a fan experience at the game. You had to be there in person to really enjoy it. And thankfully they did have good weather for that. But, all the extra space they had outside of the ice, outside of the rink, they would have things going on to entertain the fans every time there was a stoppage in play. Oh, wow. Apparently, one of the players said that they had pig races going on, and that mesmerized him. He was watching it, and he realized he had to stop because the coach was talking to him, trying to tell him, "All right, this is what we're going to do on the next play." And he's like, "Oh, I've got to rip my eyes away from this amazing pig race event that's happening just 25 yards away from the ice."
That's hilarious. Yeah, the off ice stuff. So yeah, so it was the lowest rated, had the lowest TV ratings of any Winter Classic game. I still think that you're up against bowl games. Hockey fans are going to watch hockey. And so, they're going to watch it no matter what. They're trying to, it's like, you can't be everything to everyone. You can't have, you can only do Chicago and Pittsburgh, or Chicago and Washington, or Chicago and whoever, like big markets so many times. And then you say, well, they're bigger draws, right? Like the Blackhawks, whenever it's a Winter Classic, it's a big draw, but everybody's getting burnt out on the Blackhawks there. I think we're all getting burnt out of these Winter Classic jerseys that they keep doing, and it's just like, this one is from the 1958, which is fine. Like the Blackhawks have a long history; they can go back, 70 years and pull something. They did the ones that they did last year. I looked at those and I'm like, oh, those are nice. I'm like, those are like the late 20s Blackhawk jerseys before they introduced red. We always think of them as red, white, and black, and these were just black and white. And I'm just like, yeah,
those were very cool looking.
So, very, very cool. 1920s. Of course,
because the world was black and white back in the 1920s. Black and white with a little bit of sepia tone. So
then they ruin it with the bright green shamrock on the shoulder, which it just for the Winter Classic logo. Like, let's take this cool black and white jersey and then throw a bright green patch on it. So what's the first thing your eye is drawn to? That bright green patch.
Why don't you just put a McDonald's logo on it, for God's sakes?
Right. So I think that if the NHL is okay with understanding that they can't be everything to everyone, like the Everclear song, then that's okay. You can, sometimes you're going to have it in a major market and you're going to have a big draw on TV. Sometimes you're going to have it in, Dallas shouldn't really be considered a smaller market, but you're going to have maybe two not as followed or as popular teams, and you're going to have less TV numbers, but maybe you're going to just have higher attendance numbers, or people are just going to say, hey, this is cool because, well, like you said, how it just embraced the culture of that area, of that state, right? With the pig races and the rodeo and the state fair and all that stuff. So I'm okay with that. I mean, just do it and enjoy it and just hope for the best, but understand that, like, if it doesn't, outdraw last year's Winter Classic, it's on TV, it's not necessarily a failure, because nobody said that this was a failure. I mean, like, nobody said that, and the other thing too, I watched like the first period and a half of the game, and so Corey Perry, like, minute and a half into the game, elbows Ryan Ellis. Ellis is out of the game. Corey gets 5 in a game, which is funny because I put on Twitter right away, I'm like, well, it's Corey Perry, so they should just give him 5 in a game because it's Corey Perry. And then everybody's like liking my tweet. And then like the referees decide to give him a 5 in a game. I don't know if the refs were on Twitter. I don't think they were following me that day, but like, it was like, so they gave him 5 in a game, and which is what he deserved. He ended up getting a 5-game suspension. I don't see anybody complaining about this, which is funny because everybody's usually like, oh, hockey's getting soft, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think everybody pretty much agrees. It was a shitty hit to the head with his, hitting Ryan Ellis in the head with his elbow was shitty. So that's the first thing everybody agrees on. Yep. The first thing everybody agrees on. The second thing everybody agrees on is Corey Perry.
Yep. Corey Perry is a methodical pest. He's a bit of a dying breed. I think more teams are moving towards having skilled players, or preferably skilled players with a bit of grit to them as well. Sandpaper, however you want to put it. But that guy that goes out there and intentionally goes to make other players just absolutely batshit insane and try and draw their anger. There's not as many of those around. Yeah, you can still name a few. I mean, you've got your Tom Wilsons and stuff like that. They're there. I'm not saying they're completely gone. And Corey Perry is the last of those dinosaurs. But Corey Perry has a long history of just drawing the animosity of players and fans alike. You can easily go on YouTube and see, highlights of his antics, of the things that he has done and gotten away with. Like, I mean, it seems like he only gets caught like 9 times out of 10 with something kind of dirty. There's a hilarious one that got caught on camera when Alex Semin was playing on the Hurricanes, and he was sitting on the wall waiting to hop into the game, but not putting his feet on the ice just yet. Corey Perry skates by and grabs his stick out of his hands and then tosses it into the Ducks bench and keeps going. And Semin's like, hey, what the hell? I need my stick, and he's screwed. And it was funny because it's Alex Semin. But that's most of the time, like, Corey Perry's antics are, that sort of level of juvenile behavior. But yeah, occasionally he'll do something that is a bit dirty, like this elbow, and he says, "Oh, it was completely unintentional." And someone says, a friend of mine, I would never do this sort of thing. Come on, Corey, we've heard this broken record from you plenty of times before. I don't think anybody's buying it.
I mean, and he does have the skills. I mean, he did put up 50 goals in 2010-11. He scored 30 goals a couple of times in his career. This is also his third suspension. He's been suspended twice before. So in addition to the 5 games, he's going to forfeit a little over $40,000 in his salary. One slightly, and just to kind of show what kind of, I don't say player Corey Perry is, but just like the kind of fan mentality towards him, I guess, unless he plays for your team. One of my hockey coaches, when I started learning how to play hockey, he had an Erie Otters jacket. And I asked him, I said, "Oh, Erie Otters, that's weird and random." He's like, "Yeah, my oldest boy played major junior for the Erie Otters." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome," because I mean, That's the shit right there. Major, junior, to be an American and play major, junior hockey is like, wow, right? And the funny thing is like the thing he talks about, like he never said to me, oh, my boy scored this game-winning goal, or he just said, oh yeah, one time in junior, my boy just knocked Corey Perry out. Like, I don't know if he knocked him out in a fight or he knocked him out in like a hit, but he's like, yeah, my boy knocked Corey Perry out cold. And he was just like, that's like what he was proud of. Like, that is
yes.
like, and I'm just like, oh, that's awesome, right?
That's
like, that's
great.
That's what he's bragging about. Anyway, another one name. Funny, we talk about this guy last week, and then he boomerangs back this week. Ilya Kovalchuk.
Kovalchuk, yes.
Kovalchuk. How have I never heard that one before?
Actually, when I have that name seared into my mind because there was a great picture when he got traded from the Thrashers to New Jersey, and then New Jersey came down to Atlanta to play. There were some fans that held up a ginormous sign in the stands that said, "Welcome home, Kovalchuk."
Wow.
I was like, hey, that's actually kind of crafty right there.
So Covey signs a 1-year deal with the Montreal Canadiens, I guess for the rest of the season.
League minimum, but only because they have to.
It's a two-way deal, so he makes $700,000 if he's in the NHL. He'll make $70,000 if he gets demoted to the AHL.
Never happened.
No, because he'll just go back to the KHL.
Yep, same thing that happened with Semin when the Hurricanes bought him out. The Canadiens picked him up, paid him a league minimum because basically I think he's still getting paid by the Hurricanes. And when they said, you know what, you're not doing it, we're going to demote you, he said, nope, I'll see you over in the KHL. Bye.
Right, which I can't blame him. Like
yes.
I can't, especially like Russian players. It's like, it's one thing to be in the NHL, but like if you could, he's like, well, I could just go back to the KHL and make $4 million a year. Why would I go to the? Why would you send me to the I don't know, Charlotte Checkers or the Ontario Reign, I guess, for well, that's only like an hour away from LA, but still, I mean, to make less money to play in the minors. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're there to play in the highest league in the world, and if they're not going to play in that league, they're going to go play at home. And for both of those examples, they are going to get paid handsomely by the teams that bought them out for a while. So for them, they don't care. They're not going to sit there and take a bruising on their ego. If
you're Upper Deck, the maker of hockey cards, do you even bother making a hockey card of Kovalchuk as a Canadiens player at this point? Like
only in a traded set and only for fun value. I think if you do that, you're like, hey, we're gonna make this card. It's gonna end up in like one of the later series as like one of the traded updates, and it's going to be very limited, and then collectors are gonna want it. That's the only way I see it being worthwhile.
Well, it's like when Martin Brodeur, like, he didn't play that last season. His last season, he didn't play most of the season, and then the Blues signed him to a contract. He ends up playing like 7 games, and like Upper Deck was like, oh, we're gonna have cards of Martin Brodeur in all of our Series 2 and update sets, and he'll be as a Blue. And I'm just thinking, maybe you should kind of wait and see how this plays out first. And I want to say, like, by the time those cards were hitting shelves, it was pretty much established that like Brodeur was not going to play any more games with the Blues, or he might have retired by then, or he might have like whatever. I mean, it's just funny, like so yeah, I just wonder about that, because it's like, he's going to play, I don't know. I mean, they got nothing to lose at this point, Montreal. They signed a guy who, had a very brilliant career. I think we all kind of agree once he went to the KHL and then he came back. I mean, he's older by then. He's like 36, and it's just like, yeah, he's not the same player when he was 28 or whatever. But he doesn't even have, like, even Yager at like late 30s and 40s was still a brilliant player. You know what I mean? Not putting up the same amount of goals, but still an awesome player. And Kovalchuk just didn't seem to age as gracefully.
Maybe not age as gracefully, but he also didn't have. Not to say that Jágr didn't, produce a little bit of animosity from some of the fan bases that I think he played with throughout the years. And he certainly, when he came back, drew a lot of animosity from Penguins fans, expecting him to sign with them, and then going to their cross-state rivalry, which I thought was fantastic. That's just like turn heel move right there. Awesome. But he came back in and showed that he could still be an extremely dominant player, and be classy about it. Kovalchuk, his legacy is gonna be about money and not so much the player on the ice, but the player who wanted to get paid more than Ovechkin, and the player who really wrecked I think the Devils for like a few seasons because of that action. Not that, Devils organization can't be, are innocent in this. They're the ones that try to get around league rules to sign him and give him $100,000 or $100 million or whatever to be the highest paid player. But this is probably going to be his legacy, because he's not putting up those numbers after he came back the way that Jágr did. And it's just not going to be there. And he did amazing things when he went back over to the KHL. He was clearly, he is a gifted player, but I don't know that he has the heart the way that Jágr does, because he's still playing.
Right. Yeah. So, like we always say, we'll see how that turns out. I just like, it'll
be amazing. You or I or Tim or one of the other guys on Puck John, when he finally is done with his career here in the North America, and we get to try and write about his career, especially through hockey cards and various Puck Junk pieces and stuff like that. Like this is your career. This is what you've left behind for us. This is you, Ilya Kovalchuk. See ya.
Right. Yeah. I like to see superstar. We all like to see superstar players age gracefully. I'll give you an example that you'll remember. You remember Ronnie Francis? He wound down his career with Carolina. I know he finished in Toronto, but he late 30s. He was playing with the Canes.
Yeah. Definitely a silver-haired, gray-bearded player.
But able to contribute, maybe not the way he contributed in his 20s with the Whalers, but, and that's kind of, or like Steve Yzerman, you know what I mean? Like, or even like, well, Mario Lemieux's almost incomparable. But even in his second stint or his final comeback in the 2000s, he was still a damn good player. Not the same player, but still. You have a legend, and when that legend hits their late 30s, early 40s, they're still a damn good player. And I was hoping Kovalchuk would be that, and instead he's like, scoring a handful of goals and just not doing much. And, the Kings got rid of him. The Montreal's problem now.
Yeah, All-Star Game? They're not paying him that much, so the Kings are paying him not to play there.
That's funny. It's like the Ilya Bryzgalov buyout. Bryzgalov said that one day he'd reveal, or he'd talk about, like, he doesn't talk about what went wrong in Philly, but he's like, oh, well, one day I'll talk about that. And I want that one day to be now, because, the Flyers paid Ilya Bryzgalov, a lot of money to go from one Ilya to the other, and then they paid him a lot of money to not play there when they bought out his contract, which is hilarious. But whatever.
He will have a fascinating book someday, and you're right. I hope to read it.
Lazy Man's Guide to Hockey. be really awesome the first 5 years of your career. Find some sucker to give you like $100 million contract, then just suck, get bought out, and get paid 2/3 of that to not play, and then go golfing or something. Wrestle alligators. I don't know.
Well, you know what? If NBC needs a stand-in for Roenick for the All-Star Game for fun and crazy antics, I think I know a crazy Russian goalie that might just fit the bill.
That would be good. Well, we got the All-Star Game coming up, so maybe we'll have either him or Roenick back for that. I gotta tell you, honestly, I've stopped caring about the All-Star Game ever since the whole John Scott debacle back in 2016. I always liked John Scott. I thought that whole thing, I mean, it turned out okay for him, but I thought the whole thing was shitty, the way the league treated him, the way he was traded, traded in a trade that didn't need to be made to a team that didn't want to receive him in the trade, just so they could get him off of, the Arizona Coyotes. I stopped. I like the 3-on-3 format. I'll say that. So here's what I like. I like the 3-on-3 format. I do like all-star games, and I love skills competitions. Those three things I really like. What I don't like is I don't like the fact that there's less players, but that's kind of necessary with the 3-on-3 format. You're not going to have 18 skaters and 2 goalies. That's maybe not necessary. Or 18 skaters and 3 goalies, actually, which, that was better to have 1 goalie per period. And I'll ask you a little trivia question now, and you can try to answer it later or not. But when why they switched from 2 goalies to 3 goalies, like what the catalyst was for that. There's an interesting story behind that. I'm kind of bummed that there's less players. I'm bummed that there's less fan interaction because the fans voted for John Scott, and then the NHL was like, well, no, now you can only vote for these players that we select from. And then they pick the rest of the teams, and then they let you vote for the last man in, as they call it. So it's like you get to vote for the captain, and you get to vote for the guy who got passed over, who you think should be in. So yeah, that's just kind of like my take on the All-Star Game. Thoughts?
Yeah. As far as players are concerned, there being fewer players, I think the vast majority of players in the league, with as many games that they have to play and for so long, they really look forward to the All-Star Game just so they get a break. And I know that there's the league mandated week off and all this, but every chance they can get to heal up, bruising, and rest themselves, ice knees, what have you, and kind of get their breath back so they can, move on to the second half of the season, they're going to take it. What the All-Star Game is for is it's a thank you to the fans. It's not there to decide anything. You're not looking at who's going to get home field advantage in the postseason, like the way the baseball works. It doesn't matter to a hill of beans for anything except saying thank you to the fans. And yeah, the game was getting very, very stale for a while, and I'm glad that they've made the changes that they have to try and keep it interesting. And you're right, the skills competition is what we love, and the best part about those players that come is, especially if the fans get to choose them, is they want players that have character and charisma and are going to bring that colorfulness to the skills competitions, things like that. Like Marc-Andre Fleury was, a wonderful stalwart in goal because he knew none of that cared, and he could just sit there and just be a joker and mess around and get laughs and stuff like that. And that's what people love, is that humanizing effect that the players can bring when nothing really matters. They're not going to sit there and try super, super hard. That's why, defensemen don't sit there and lay out massive checks or anything like that. Since you bring up John Scott, him dropping gloves with I think it was Patrick Kane.
Yes.
That All-Star Game, that was hilarious and everybody loved that. That was just fantastic. And so that's, I think it was the year before they had the fan vote, and like there was a serious threat of Paul Bissonnette getting voted in by the fans. And the league definitely didn't want that. And Paul Bissonnette finally had to hop on Twitter and be like, "Okay, guys, this is really funny, but cut it out.
Right.
I do not be there." Things like that. But yeah, we want to have those characters and that sort of thing. And yeah, the game may not be that exciting to watch, but the skills competition is. And have you ever been to an All-Star Game event?
Yeah, and actually that kind of ties in with my little bit of trivia that I was going to talk about. So I went to the 1991 All-Star Game when it was in Chicago. My aunt had season tickets. My aunt and uncle had season tickets, and they took me to the game. My grandmother actually paid for the ticket. I mean, they would have probably taken me anyways, but my grandmother just gave it, as my Christmas present. Just to, he's got to go because, this might never happen again in Chicago. And I mean, it's been almost 30 years now. So what happened was I went to the game and they had the skills competition, which was a lot of fun. And then the game was actually kind of boring. I remember sitting there and watching the game and just being a little bit bored because nothing, it kind of got to this blowout score and then just kind of nothing happened. And I remember when a penalty got called and it was whoa, a penalty, something to stop the play. Otherwise it was just a lot of flow back and forth. What happened was 1990-91 season. You still had balloting at that point where they were paper ballots, and you'd punch the ballots, you'd put them in the ballot box, and you'd vote for the starters. So you voted for the starters, 6 from the Campbell Conference, which was pretty much the Western Conference, and 6 from the Wales Conference, which became the Eastern Conference. And what happened was Mike Vernon of the Calgary Flames, who was a damn good goalie at the time, he got voted as the starter. Now, the reserves were picked by the All-Star coach, and the All-Star coach was whatever teams made it to the Stanley Cup Finals the year before, those coaches would become the All-Star coaches the next year. So for Campbell Conference, you had John Muckler of the Edmonton Oilers, who won the Stanley Cup, and for the Wales Conference, you had Mike Milbury, who was the coach of the Bruins. Actually, there's 2 interesting stories here. So what Muckler did was they won the Cup, and their MVP was goaltender Bill Ranford. So, of course, he's going to pick his MVP as the second goalie for the All-Star Game. Chicago fans were livid, though, because the game was in Chicago, and Ed Belfour was having a monstrous rookie season. He was just tearing it up. He was playing almost every game for the Blackhawks. He ended up that year, he won the Calder Trophy, he won the Vezina Trophy, and he won the Jennings Trophy. So, I mean, he just basically had an amazing season. Well, they're like, well, why isn't Ed Belfour the other goalie? And Muckler, I mean, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but it was basically he had to pick his goalie because his goalie was the MVP of the Stanley Cup Final. How do you not put him on the All-Star team? I mean, they're always going to be a little bit partial to their players anyway, but I mean, that was kind of no competition. So Muckler said, can we have 3 goalies? And the league was like, no. And he's like, but there's 3 periods, 3 goalies, 3 periods, right? League was like, no, right? But here's the effed up thing about the league. The league was mad that Mike Milbury, did not pick Guy Lafleur to be in the All-Star Game. Lafleur was in his last season. He was winding it down with the Quebec Nordiques. And they were like, well, Guy Lafleur should be in the All-Star Game. Who does Mike Milbury put in the All-Star Game instead? Chris Nyland, his enforcer. Well, Nyland ended up getting hurt and not playing in the All-Star Game anyway. But Milbury's like, look, fighting is part of hockey. Nyland is a good fighter. There you go, right? I mean, that's part of hockey, a bigger part in the 90s especially. So then the NHL did this thing. They called it the commissioner's selection. Even though this was before there was a commissioner, it was still a president. But they called it the commissioner's selection, and they picked Bobby Smith, who was winding down his career with the Minnesota North Stars, and Guy Lafleur. To kind of like pick an older guy, elder statesman from either conference and put him in the game because they really wanted Guy Lafleur to be in that game. So it's funny that the league was like, no, you can't have 3 goalies, even though 3 goalies, 3 periods, that makes sense. And, you have like 10 or 11 teams per conference. It was kind of weird to only pick like 2 goalies, but 4 centers, 4 left wings, 4 right, and then etc. So that's what happened there. That's when it switched to 3 goalies, which it has been until they went to the 3-on-3 format, because then those are only 2 period games, first half, second half, which I think makes sense. For a 3-on-3 game, we don't want to see them go like 3 20-minute periods. So that's how that played out. I did, and to answer your question from 4 minutes ago, I did go to that All-Star game. I love the skills competition. I like the player introductions. I like going to the All-Star game. I mean, if they had it in Chicago next year, I'd go. I'd find a way to go.
Sure.
I feel that like with less fan participation, because like you said, it's a thank you to the fans. But then it's like, okay, fans, this is a thank you to the fans, but then we're going to pick the teams for you. Oh, and that guy that you voted for, Alexander Ovechkin, he's not going to play.
Yeah, he's him just basically like not even caring. Just be like, yeah, no, I'm not going, and I'll go ahead and sit the game. Like, well, I don't know which team it is that they are going to be playing that he's going to be sitting, but they're probably like, oh yeah, that's cool with us too. Not only do most of our players get to take a break, but we also don't have to face Ovechkin in a game. Awesome.
Hey, let's give that Connor McDavid kid a break. He deserves it.
Yeah, really.
Let's give him a break. Let's give that Crosby a break. Let's give...
I know Crosby's injured this year, but, like, when's the last time he even showed up for an All-Star game? Because he's mysteriously been injured a lot.
I don't know, but, I think back to, like, I got into hockey in late 89 or early 89, halfway through 88-89 season, and like practically every All-Star game I watched, Wayne Gretzky always participated. The big guys always came, that 90-91.
Gretzky's a great fan guy. He's always made time. I've never heard anybody that has met Wayne Gretzky say, I was disappointed I expected more or whatever. Like, he has always been extraordinarily generous to the fans because he understands the dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, he even, like, in 91, he even talked about boycotting the All-Star game in Chicago. I think he had a cousin or somebody who was in the military, and this was when that whole Gulf War conflict was going on, but he didn't do it. I mean, he was just kind of, I think he was more upset about it. And I mean, you're going to say things sometimes, but he didn't like say, oh, screw this, I'm boycotting this stupid All-Star game. What's the point of an All-Star game when the world's going to war or whatever, right? No, it didn't go there. And he played in the game. And that's the thing, like, when I see somebody like Gretzky or Lemieux or Yzerman or Lindros or like all those guys would just be happy to play in the All-Star game. And I think maybe now it's kind of like the players are like, yeah, I know I'm an All-Star, but I don't need to be in the game to know that I'm an All-Star. Whereas maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was seen as an honor.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't know, unless they get like some sort of like bonus from the league, how you can really like improve that. Other than honestly, like give the fans more control over who they want to like represent their team to go there. Like, find the guy that they love. It doesn't have to be the most skilled guy, although it does definitely help. But find the guy that they want to go represent their team and give, if it's supposed to be a thank you to the fans, then give the fans what they want. If you want this to be a thing for them and be something that's going to continue and grow, that's what it's got to be about.
And one thing I'll say, I remember, so after Milbury picked Chris Nyland to be on the All-Star team and didn't pick Guy Lafleur, another thing that the league did then was they took away control of picking the reserve players. That used to be something that the All-Star coach used to do, which I thought was cool because, it'd be the guy who won the cup, the coach who won the cup. So of course they'd pick like 4 or 5 of their guys, but they could because it was a 20-man roster, 21-man roster. And then the runner-up coach would usually also pick some of his guys, that helped get their team to the final even though they lost. And when the Blackhawks lost the 92 final, I was like thinking, oh, well, this is cool because at least Mike Keenan will be the coach of the Campbell Conference for the 93 All-Star Game. Well, a couple things happened. Keenan stepped down as coach. Daryl Sutter took over. But then the league just decided to pick the reserve players because they didn't want Milbury or somebody like that to do that anymore. Where they're like, well, I'm just going to pick 6 guys for my team, and even if they're not like worthy of it in the league's eyes. But I really wanted to see Blackhawks player Dirk Graham make the All-Star game because he had been the team captain for a number of years. He was pretty much he was the team captain of the Blackhawks until he retired, and then Chris Chelios became team captain. But Graham just worked his butt off during his career, and he was just such a hardworking, good, Selke Trophy winner, but like a Selke Trophy winner who was actually like not an offensive powerhouse who also played good defensively. He was just a damn good defensive player, like a good shutdown player. And I wanted to see him get his All-Star game, and he never got into one, and that would have been his chance because it would have been Mike Keenan, and Keenan would have been like, all right, you're our team captain, and you won a Selke Trophy a couple of years ago. I'm putting you in this game. Didn't happen. So I do kind of miss that kind of eccentricity, like when you get a coach, if John Tortorella was the All-Star coach and he got to pick his reserve players, maybe you'd raise an eyebrow at 1 or 2 of them, but he'd probably have a pretty good reason for it. And why he picked those players. So that's why sometimes you got to take the bad with the good, because you get more interesting choices.
Sure. No, I understand that entirely. At the end of the day, like anything else, the NHL is a business. They're there to make money. Whether it be it ad revenue, eyeballs on TV, butts and seats, corn dogs in mouths, whatever it is. It's about the bottom line. I would love to just see another shakeup here and there. I mean, you've got to do that every now and then, because you have it every year, and things get stale very quickly. I was at the one here in Raleigh back in 2011, and that Raleigh did an amazingly good job of the fanfare and just shutting down some of the streets in downtown and having just all these crazy events happening, and we had people from all over North America fly here to come to the All-Star Game because it was so accessible. And we met a lot of people from Canada, from California, just everywhere you can think of, showing up and just talking with them. And they're like, hey, what else is great to do here in Raleigh? I see you're wearing a Hurricanes jersey. How much does it cost to go to a game typically? Oh my God, you're only paying that, blah, blah, blah. And at that point, even rival fan bases just set everything down and put it aside and have a great time with one another. And the players that you normally have animosity towards, you're cheering for them in that skills competition for that hardest shot, for that fastest skating. You want to see them succeed. And at that point, it becomes one of the most wonderful experiences in hockey. Honestly, outside of seeing your team win the Stanley Cup once or 3 times or whatever, it is a wonderful feeling to know that this community of fans really can put everything aside, all differences, and embrace one another because of their embrace of the game. And that's fantastic.
So this won't be the last time we'll talk about the All-Star Game because I got other things to say, but I'll save those for another day. But you're going on a little bit of a road trip, I understand, in a couple of weeks. So why don't we end the show talking about Jim Howard's big adventure?
Okay, yeah. So we are myself, my wife, and a friend. We have a unique opportunity here. in having a. Have you ever heard of? I think it was called like the Knothole Gang in baseball a long time ago. It might be a little wrong, but there's I guess sort of a club where you go to different cities and go see different baseball games. Well, we're having a hockey weekend because we have a Hurricanes game here in Raleigh on a Friday night. Then our new affiliate down in Greenville, South Carolina, about 4 hours away, they have a game on Saturday night. So we're going to drive, the next morning all the way down to Greenville and go watch the Greenville Swamp Rabbits play. Great name, fantastic jersey too. Really love the logo. I'm the only one that calls them the Bog Bunnies. Maybe I'll call. I'll hold up a sign for that. I think we're sitting only a couple rows behind the bench there. And then the next day we're going to get up and drive to Charlotte to go see the other Hurricanes affiliate, the AHL affiliate, Charlotte Checkers play. They have a 1:00 game on Sunday, and that's only about 2.5 hours away from Raleigh. So by the time that game's done, we got plenty of time to drive back and still get to work, and we're not taking any days off of work there. So that's going to be our road trip in a nutshell, but I'm going to try and document it well and hopefully give you guys a good review about our road trip adventure, kind of give you an insight on it, and hopefully other people will get out there and go have a nice Lost hockey weekend as well, going to see some wonderful minor league games, because minor league games are a lot of fun. They really are.
I think one thing that might be fun, you got to compare the prices of a beer, a Coke, and a hot dog at all three places. Got to find those common items. You know what I mean? Like
the items you're going to find at every stadium or at each event. You're always going to find a hot dog. You're always going to find a beer. You're always going to find like those things. Yeah, get a great price comparison. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's one thing, and then obviously. I don't know. I mean, even just should be interesting to hear what you find out. I mean, I love going to the Chicago Wolves games. They play in the AHL. They, as you know, they met your Charlotte Checkers teams in the Calder Cup Finals last year. And that was sad. 5 games. I was probably one of the only Wolves fans that stuck around and watched the Checkers get the Calder Cup presented. I actually applauded their guys. I mean, I wanted to see a championship. I just wanted to see the other team win. But, you're there to see a cup get presented. You might as well watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you may not get that chance again.
Right. So, I mean, and I felt good for, happy for the team that won. But, I mean, minor league hockey games are a lot of fun. I've never been to an ECHL game, so that's going to be news to me. Swamp Rabbits, yeah, they do have a cool logo. That should be a lot of fun. So any final thoughts?
I think we've covered everything well. I hope that Tim is doing well in his new abode and not struggling too bad with trying to put together the IKEA furniture that will probably be holding his vast collection.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say, though, is folks who are listening, curious to know who you think should be on the All-Star team, or what you think of the All-Star game, or the fan selections, or the league selections, or whatever. So, definitely if you have an opinion on that, we'd love to hear it. Maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode of the podcast. But all right, then I think we'll just wrap it up for today. So thank you, everyone, for listening to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. Hope you have a great week and hope you'll be back here in another week.
For more hockey goodness, follow us on Twitter @PuckJunk.